It was the summer of 1938 in Evian, France. 32 delegates from various countries participated in a 9-day debate entitled the Evian Conference. The fate of the Jewish people was in the hands of these representatives, who would decide where the refugees from Nazi Germany would live. The significant debate demonstrated the extreme lack of support for the Jews, the few options they had to escape from the Nazis, and greatly contributed to the number of Jews killed in the Holocaust. Throughout Europe, specifically Germany, Hitler and the Nazi regime was gaining power. As hatred against the Jews started to develop in 1933, their lives became threatened by the idea of Judenrein, the freeing of Jews from their country. During this time period, specific countries and groups of people expressed anti-Semitic attitudes towards Jews. In Germany, rules were being placed stripping the Jews of their basic rights. These rules were called the Nuremberg Laws, established in 1935. One law, Nuremberg Law for the Protection of German Blood and German Honor, quoted, "Marriages between Jews and subjects of the state of Germany or related blood are forbidden. Marriages nevertheless concluded are invalid, even if concluded abroad to circumvent this law." The law also stated Jews are forbidden to fly the Reich or national flag or to display the Reich colors. The Scotland Herald reported that the Jews' livelihoods gone, the rights of citizenship taken from them, and their future uncertain. These are just a few hardships that the Jews encountered in their daily life, despite the multiple immigration quotas and laws established in the US and Germany during the 1920s. Jewish refugees continued to flee Germany. The problem was getting out of hand, especially after Germany's annexation over Austria in 1938, which brought thousands of more Jews into the Nazi state. Das Schwarz Korps, a writer from Manchester Guardian, states, "To these threats, which are not vain, there is only one answer. The Jews in Germany must be rescued from that country and rescued quickly." The conditions in Germany were extremely dangerous for the Jewish people, and the only way to escape these harsh conditions was fleeing the country. The United States President, Franklin D. Roosevelt, decided to take action. He called the conference because he wanted to help the Jewish people and establish a solution for the ongoing refugee problem. President Roosevelt sent a telegram saying, "I hope for all success to the committee and its work, which is of such importance for a large part of humanity now plunged in despair." He believed that this debate would greatly benefit the Jewish refugees. Although there were 32 countries in the debate, the most prominent were the United States, Dominican Republic, United Kingdom, France, and Australia.
The delegates at the conference expressed different opinions concerning the placement of the Jewish refugees. There were two prominent sides in this debate: the countries who agreed to let the Jews live in their societies and the ones who did not. The majority of the countries who participated in this conference were against Jews entering their nation for various reasons. Although the United States felt remorse for these Jewish victims, their sympathy was not enough. They were not willing to welcome a multitude of refugees. Eugenics, the study of methods of improving genetic qualities by selective breeding, played a huge role in the debate. Many countries believed the Jews would cause genetic defects throughout the population. George Warren, executive secretary and chief aide of Roosevelt, stated that the United States was not in a good position to bring in refugees. He said it was towards the end of the Depression. Our own Congress was very hostile to the idea of admitting any refugees. Many officials and citizens in the United States felt that admitting the Jews into their country would cause unemployment and economic competition. Even so, the U.S. agreed to allow 27,000 to 30,000 refugees per year. Myron Taylor, U.S. representative, describes, "At a time when there is serious unemployment in many countries, when there is a shrinkage of subsistence bases, and when the population of the world is at a peak, a major migration is taking place, and the time has come when governments must act and act promptly and effectively in a long-range program of comprehensive scale." Ultimately, the United States understood that by denying the admissions of Jewish refugees, the problem would worsen. However, by 1939, approximately 95,000 Jews emigrated to the U.S. Despite Myron's pleas, the United States did not admit a generous amount of refugees. The Australian delegate stated, "Our government is embarrassed by the number of German and Austrian Jews who have applied for admission to the country. The refugees might not only affect employment, but might also, by their very numbers and community of interest, fail to absorb themselves in the common stock." Australia's chief delegate, Colonel White, stated that, "It will no doubt be appreciated also that, as we have no real racial problem, we are not desirous of importing one." The United Kingdom argued that their nation was overcrowded. They said it has been the traditional policy of successive British governments to offer asylum to persons who, for political, racial, or religious reasons, have had to leave their own countries, but the United Kingdom is not a country of immigration. However, the country admitted 40,000 Jews into their nation by September 1939. Also, many countries like Canada were experiencing harsh conditions and effects from the Great Depression and were unable to support many refugees. France explained that although they felt compassion for the Jewish people, their country had already reached the extreme point of saturation as regards admission of refugees. Despite the lack of support for the refugees shown by these countries, some nations were willing to help out. Mexican delegate Primo Villamichel stated, "Our collaboration will make it possible to carry out migration of refugees from Germany and Austria in an orderly manner at a rate appropriate to each country's requirements and possibilities." Many countries were willing to take in the refugees, not just out of pity, but for agricultural purposes. Garcia Calderon, Peruvian delegate, explained that Peru would place strict restriction on lawyers, doctors, and other professional immigrants, but accept farmers and all agricultural workers. Countries desired to obtain more agricultural workers because more labor would result in a greater production of materials, which would help to improve the country's economy. By 1939, about 75,000 Jews emigrated to Central and South America. Other countries also allowed limited number of refugees, like Netherlands and New Zealand.
The country known for allowing a copious number of Jewish refugees into their society was the Dominican Republic. Like Mexico, the Dominican Republic promoted the development of agriculture and strongly desired more manual labor. They intended for the Jewish people to work on farms. Although this was not the only purpose for admitting Jews into the Dominican Republic dictator General Rafael Trujillo had one main thought:
the Jews could whiten the population.
Nevertheless, immigrants in the Dominican believed that Trujillo's motivation was not important. A Jewish refugee named Kat said, "The question is not why he did it, I am thankful he did it." The support for the Jewish refugees was remarkable, as the Dominican government allowed as many as 100,000 Jewish refugees to resettle. One descendant of a Dominican immigrant said, "The Jewish community is very thankful to the Dominican Republic and the Dominican people." Overall, the Evian Conference proved to be ineffective. A mere 200,000 refugees were placed into different countries and able to escape the Nazi regime. Resulting from the diplomatic gathering, many organizations and bills were formed which attempted to save and support the Jewish people. The Intergovernmental Committee on Refugees was established, which was a futile effort by George Rubley to get some kind of financial deal with the Nazis to let the refugees out with some of their own property. The ICR wanted to find permanent settlements for the refugees and to convince Germany in allowing Jewish immigration.
Due to little authority and no funds, the committee failed completely. Another result from the conference in 1939 was the Wagner-Rogers Bill. This bill was implemented by Senator Robert F. Wagner in hopes to save 20,000 German refugee children and allowing them into the United States.
The Senate did not approve the proposal, and the hopes of emigrating into a safer world disappeared for the Jewish people.
The major outcome of the conference was the fact that there was no outcome. Germany found it astounding that foreign countries criticized Germany for their treatment of the Jews, while few countries were actually willing to take in the refugees when the opportunity offered. Hitler stated, "They, the world, complains of the boundless cruelty with which Germany seeks to rid itself of Jewish elements. However, countries with icy coldness assured us that obviously there was no place for the Jews in their territory, so no help is given, but morality is saved." The world seemed to be divided into two parts: those places where the Jews could not live and those places where they could not enter. This conference showed how little support the Jewish people had. Anti-Semitic views spread throughout the world, causing widespread hatred aimed at the Jews. During the time of the Evian Conference, many countries were experiencing chaos and could not handle the emigration of Jewish refugees. Jews were not universally welcome, and nobody wanted them. They are persecuted for their religious beliefs and remain a separate race. The countries who attended the Evian Conference tried to help the Jewish people in finding a place where they could call home. Despite the good intentions of the Evian Conference, Jews were still unwanted throughout the world, and hatred still remained.